Millionaire CEO finds and takes home black nurse. You're coming with me. She was freezing at the bus stop. You're coming with me. The voice cut through the cold early morning wind like a non-negotiable order. Camila looked up from her dead cell phone, seeing through the mist of her own breath a tall man getting out of a black Bentley. Snow was falling heavily on New York, turning the empty streets into a silent white desert. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and she had been there for over an hour, shivering at the bus stop after a 16-hour shift at the hospital. "I'm sorry, but I don't," she began, instinctively backing away. "It's not a request," the man interrupted, taking off his coat and holding it out to her. "You'll freeze to death if you stay here." Alexander Whitmore was 42 years old and had never stopped for anyone on the street. CEO of the largest private hospital network in the country. His $3 billion fortune had been built on efficiency, coldness, and quick decisions. But something about that black woman in a blue coat, her curly hair escaping from a messy bun, stirred something buried deep in his conscience. Camila Santos hesitated. At 31, a nurse for a decade, she had learned to trust her instincts. And her instincts told her that accepting help from rich white strangers never ended well for people like her. But her lips were purple from the cold, and she could no longer feel her fingers. "Where do you live?" Alexander asked, opening the passenger door. "Harlem," she murmured, finally getting into the warm car. The interior of the Bentley was a world apart. Italian leather, polished wood, and a silence that cost more than Camila's entire apartment. She watched Alexander adjust the temperature controls, noting how precise, calculated his movements were. Nothing about this man was casual. "Do you work at the Metropolitan?" he asked, striking up a conversation that seemed too casual to be natural. "Bro City Hospital," she replied, watching his eyes light up with interest when she mentioned she was a pediatric emergency specialist burn unit. "That must be challenging," Alexander commented. But there was something in his tone that sounded less like genuine interest and more like evaluation. "How many years of experience?" Camila frowned. It was the third specific question about her job in 5 minutes. 10 years. Why all the curiosity? "Professional admiration," he said, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "I always respect dedication." During the drive, she watched his perfectly manicured hands on the steering wheel, the Patek Philippe watch on his wrist, the suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. He asked more questions about protocols, shifts, coworkers. Questions too specific for casual curiosity. "I've been with the public system for 10 years, she said, testing a growing suspicion. "Even with all the recent changes." "Changes?" Alexander asked, but the tone carried knowledge. "Not surprise. The acquisitions. A private network bought 3 public hospitals in the city recently. Whitmore Medical Group." She pronounced the name slowly, watching his reaction. A muscle twitched in his jaw. "I know that company well." When they reached the modest building where she lived, Alexander insisted on walking her to the door. In the broken elevator, climbing 5 floors on foot, he remained silent, but his eyes catalogued every detail. The peeling paint, the dimly lit hallways, the stark difference between that world and his. "Camila Santos," she said at the door, realizing that he had asked her full name twice during the trip. "Alexander Whitmore," he replied, handing her a gold card. "If you need anything, anything at all, call me." She looked at the card and her heart raced. CEO Whitmore Medical Group. The man who had just bought 3 public hospitals in the city, including hers. The man who, according to the news, was planning significant restructuring of the medical staff. "Thanks for the ride," she said, forcing a smile as 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. When the door closed, Alexander stood in the hallway for a long moment, a strange smile forming on his lips. He took out his cell phone and dialed. "David, it's me. I need a complete background check. A nurse named Camila Santos, Bronx Municipal Hospital. I want everything. Performance, evaluations, disciplinary history. And David. I need this by tomorrow." On the other side of the door, Camila leaned against the closed wood, her heart racing. There was something in his eyes that didn't match the kindness he had shown her. A calculated coldness she recognized all too well in powerful men who saw people like her as nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet. She grabbed her laptop and typed Alexander Whitmore into Google. The first headlines made her blood run cold. CEO fires 600 employees via email. Whitmore closes pediatric ward at public hospital to cut costs. Employees denounce toxic work environment at Whitmore hospitals. But it was the last link that made her hands shake. Leaked recording. CEO calls Black employees' human resource problem to be solved. The chance encounter in the snowstorm suddenly didn't seem so chance anymore. And Camila, looking at the gold card in her hands, realized she had just come onto the radar of the man who could destroy her career. If this story of late-night encounters and impossible coincidences has piqued your curiosity, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because you haven't seen anything yet of what this man was really planning for her. 3 days later, Camila was in the middle of an emergency procedure when her supervisor appeared at the operating room door. "Santos, I need to talk to you now." Margaret's icy tone made everyone present exchange glances. Camila finished suturing the patient in silence, washed her hands, and followed her supervisor to the administrative office. Her heart was racing even before she saw the papers on the table. "We've received some concerns about your performance," Margaret began, avoiding eye contact. "Reports of recklessness, questions about protocols." Camila frowned. "What reports? My performance has always been exemplary. You yourself said last week that I was the best on the pediatric team. Things have changed." Margaret slid a folder across the desk. 3 anonymous reports arrived this morning. Serious allegations of medical negligence. Camila's hands trembled as she read the documents. Each accusation was technically possible, but completely fabricated. Someone had studied her recent cases with surgical precision, twisting standard procedures into evidence of incompetence. "This is ridiculous, Margaret. You've known me for 10 years. When have I ever made a mistake? Management is concerned, especially with the changes in leadership." Margaret sighed. The new Whitmore administration doesn't tolerate risk. The name hit Camila like a punch. Whitmore is behind this. They've implemented new evaluation protocols. Much more rigorous. Margaret looked genuinely distressed. "Camila, you're going to have to prove these accusations are false. Until then, you're suspended from surgery." Camila left the meeting in a daze. 10 years of an impeccable career being called into question by anonymous reports that appeared magically after she met Alexander Whitmore. The coincidence was impossible to ignore. On the bus home, she noticed a black sedan following her in the same direction. When she got off 3 stops before hers to test her suspicion, the car continued on, but in the rearview mirror of a store, she saw the same vehicle parked 2 blocks behind her. Her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "I heard about your problems at work. If you need to talk, I'm available, Alexander." Her hands trembled. How did he know about her problems before she had even told anyone? That night, Camila called her sister Helena, a labor lawyer in Chicago. "Lena, I need help. Someone is trying to destroy my career." "Calm down, Camila. Tell me everything from the beginning." As she recounted the last few days, Camila noticed a pattern. Alexander hadn't found her by chance that night. A billionaire CEO doesn't drive alone through the streets in the middle of a snowstorm. He was looking for her. "Wait," Helena interrupted. "Did you say Whitmore Medical, Camila? That company is known for aggressive acquisition practices. They usually identify key employees and either co-opt them or eliminate them before mergers." "Eliminate how?" "Fabricated disciplinary proceedings, forced transfers, creating toxic environments. Anything to weaken resistance to change." Helena paused. "But why would they focus specifically on you?" Camila thought about the specific questions Alexander had asked in the car, about protocols, experience, specialization in pediatrics. "Because I know how the hospital really works. I know every flaw in the system, every protocol they'll want to cut to reduce costs. Or because I represent some specific threat he has identified." In the weeks that followed, the pressure increased. Alexander appeared constantly in her life, always with plausible excuses. At the cafe where she had lunch, business meeting canceled. At the market near her apartment, I live in the neighborhood. At the hospital entrance during her shift, visiting the new facilities. Each encounter was cordial, concerned. He asked about her work, offered help, showed genuine interest in her problems. But Camila noticed that he always knew details she hadn't shared. "I heard you were suspended from surgery," he said during a chance encounter at the pharmacy. "That must be very frustrating for someone with your experience." "How did you know?" she asked directly. "News travels fast in the medical field." He smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "Maybe I can help. I know people in management." "Thank you, but I'll figure it out on my own." "Sure. You've always been independent." The way he said it sounded as if he had known her for years, not days. That night, Camila did something she had never done in her adult life. She hired a private investigator. Using her emergency savings, she paid to find out everything about Alexander Whitmore that the newspapers didn't publish. The report arrived a week later, revealing a disturbing pattern. At every hospital Whitmore had acquired, key employees had been systematically pressured to leave or transferred to powerless positions. Those who resisted faced mysterious disciplinary investigations that always resulted in dismissal. But there was more. Alexander had a history of personal interest in Black women in medical leadership positions. 3 documented cases in the last 5 years. All brilliant professionals who had suddenly lost their positions after interactions with him. Camila understood that this wasn't paranoia. This was a corporate predator who had made her his next target. And she had walked right into his trap. Each new revelation about Alexander only strengthened something inside her that he couldn't see. A quiet determination fueled by the very injustice he was trying to impose. What that privileged man didn't know was that every act of manipulation was writing his own sentence of defeat. Because he was completely underestimating a woman who had survived far worse than a spoiled CEO playing God. The private investigator Camila had hired was Tony Reeves, a former New York police detective who now specialized in corporate cases. When he delivered his second report, 3 weeks after the first, his findings went beyond anything she had imagined. "Camila, you need to see this," Tony said, spreading photos and documents across the table at the small cafe where they met. Alexander Whitmore isn't just a corporate predator. He's a calculating psychopath. The evidence was devastating. Over the past 5 years, Alexander had used the exact same pattern with 3 other Black women in leadership positions in the medical field. First, the chance encounter. Then, the pursuit disguised as romantic interest. Next, the systematic destruction of their careers through fabricated accusations. Look at these messages. Tony slid over printouts of WhatsApp conversations he had obtained through a source inside Whitmore. He refers to you as deconstruction projects. Literally a game to him. One of the messages made Camila's stomach churn. The Black nurse is taking the bait perfectly. A few more weeks and she'll be completely destroyed professionally. I'll bet you 50 grand she'll beg for my forgiveness. How did you get this? Camila asked, her hands shaking slightly. I have my contacts. Most importantly, one of his previous victims, Dr. Patricia Williams, is willing to testify. She lost everything. Her career, her home, even custody of her daughter because of his smear campaign. Camila closed her eyes, processing the information. What about the others? One moved to Canada, financially ruined. The other attempted suicide twice. Tony paused. Camila, this man destroys lives for fun. And you are specifically targeted because you are Black and competent. It's a sick fetishization of domination. That same week, Alexander intensified his psychological games. He showed up at the hospital during Camila's shift with an expensive bouquet of flowers, playing the role of romantic suitor in front of her colleagues. I thought you might need something to brighten your day, he said, loud enough for others to hear. I heard you've been facing some challenges at work. Camila accepted the flowers with a forced smile. But her gaze was pure ice. Very kind of you, Alexander. You shouldn't have bothered. Of course I should. After all, I am partly responsible for the administrative changes here. He smiled, and for the first time, let his mask slip slightly. It would be terrible if such a qualified nurse lost her job because of misunderstandings. The threat was clear and public. Several colleagues heard and exchanged uncomfortable glances. Alexander was marking his territory, showing that he had power over her professional destiny. That night, Camila received a call from her sister Helena. I found something interesting, Remember I told you about meeting lawyers who specialize in discrimination cases? Well, one of them has taken on Whitmore Medical before. What did you find out? Alexander has a weakness. Ego. He documents everything because he thinks he's untouchable. He keeps records of his conquests like trophies. More importantly, he has a boss. The Whitmore board doesn't know about his psychopathic games. Helena paused. Camila, if we can get enough proof of his practices, not only will you be safe, we can destroy his entire operation. Camila began to move silently. During the day, she maintained the facade of a frightened victim that Alexander expected to see. But at night, she was building something he could never imagine. Through Tony, she made contact with the other victims. Dr. Patricia Williams agreed not only to testify, but to provide evidence she had kept secret for years. Camila discovered she wasn't the only one who had documented every strange interaction with Alexander. He always makes the same mistake, Patricia explained during a video call. He underestimates our intelligence. He thinks we're too emotional to think strategically. Camila also began recording all of her conversations with Alexander using an app that automatically sent the files to a secure server. Every veiled threat, every condescending comment, every display of his arrogance was being documented. The turning point came when Alexander, feeling completely in control, made his biggest mistake. He sent Camila a text message that was so explicitly threatening that even a conservative court couldn't ignore it. Camila, I hope you understand that your position at the hospital depends entirely on my goodwill. It would be a shame if other irregularities appeared in your file. Some people are simply not cut out for certain positions of responsibility. I'm sure a smart woman like you knows exactly what I'm talking about. When Camila showed the message to Helena, her sister laughed for the first time in weeks. My dear sister, he just hung himself with his own rope. But what really changed everything was Tony's discovery that Alexander kept a secret digital file with photos, videos, and evaluations of the women he had destroyed. A digital trophy case of his victims, complete with notes on the techniques he had used against each one. Camila, Tony said, his voice grave over the phone. I got access to his private office. What I found goes beyond corporate harassment. It's evidence of a systematic pattern of racial and sexual persecution that could result in federal criminal charges. While Alexander continued his cat-and-mouse games, convinced he was slowly breaking the spirit of yet another easy victim, Camila was quietly building a case that would not only destroy him professionally, but put him behind bars. And the most ironic part of all, every arrogant move he made, every show of power, every veiled threat, was providing another piece of the puzzle Camila was putting together with the surgical precision of someone who knew exactly how to destroy a tumor. The Whitmore Medical Group board meeting was scheduled to begin at 9 o'clock on a sunny Tuesday morning in March. Alexander entered the 50th floor conference room with his usual confidence, greeting the 12 board members with firm handshakes and calculated smiles. Gentlemen, we have excellent news about the integration of the public hospitals, he began, turning on the projector. Operating efficiency is up 20% and Alexander, interrupted James Whitmore Sr., chairman of the board and father of the company's founder. Before we proceed, we have some urgent matters to discuss. The icy tone made Alexander pause. Around the table, he noticed expressions he couldn't decipher: concern, discomfort. Some members avoided eye contact. Issues, he asked, trying to maintain control. Issues regarding your personal and professional conduct, said Margaret Chun, Director of Human Resources, sliding a thick folder across the table. We have received extensive documentation regarding your extracurricular activities. Alexander opened the folder and felt the world spin. On the first page was a photo of him entering the secret digital archive in his office. On the second were printouts of his messages to Camila. On the third were complete transcripts of recorded conversations in which he referred to his victims as deconstruction projects. Where did you get this? He muttered, his hands shaking imperceptibly. From multiple sources, James Sr. replied, his voice heavy with decrepitude. Including 3 lawyers specializing in racial discrimination, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and, he paused dramatically, an extraordinarily well-prepared young nurse. The door to the room opened and Camila entered, followed by Helena, Tony Reeves, and 2 federal agents. Alexander felt his legs go weak. Good morning, Alexander, Camila said, her voice calm but laden with authority. I imagine you remember me, the nurse you tried to destroy for fun. This is a misunderstanding, Alexander stammered, looking desperately around the table. Gentlemen, you know me. These accusations are meticulously documented, Helena interrupted, placing a second folder on the table. 3 previous victims. 15 months of surveillance. Evidence of systematic discrimination based on race and gender. Explicit threats. And this. She turned on a tablet playing a recording of the conversation where Alexander bragged about destroying the black nurse. The audio filled the room. Alexander's voice, crystal clear, describing Camila as part of a bet on how long it would take to completely destroy her. Laughter in the background from other executives. Explicitly racist comments about putting people in their place. Margaret Chin closed her eyes, clearly embarrassed. Alexander, this is criminally discriminatory. Not just indefensible, but federally prosecutable. Agent Morrison, said one of the men in suits, showing his badge. FBI. Alexander Whitmore, you're under arrest for civil rights violations under Federal Code 18, Section 242, conspiracy to commit systematic racial discrimination and criminal harassment. Alexander stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. You can't do this. I'm the CEO of this company. I built this. Actually, said James Sr., rising slowly, you're not anymore. The board voted unanimously for your immediate removal. All your contracts are null and void. Your shares confiscated. And you are permanently banned from any executive position at any medical company in the country. Tony Reeves opened his laptop. Alexander, would you like to see what's happening outside? On the screen, live feeds from 3 news channels. Whitmore Medical CEO arrested for systematic racial discrimination. Billionaire executive kept trophies of black victims. Recordings reveal racial harassment scheme at private hospitals. Alexander looked at Camila, his eyes now desperate. You don't understand what you've done. You've destroyed careers, jobs. No, Camila said, approaching him for the first time since that night in the snow. I saved careers. I saved lives. And most importantly, I saved other women from going through what you put me through. She held up the tablet, showing messages of support that were already numbering in the hundreds. Black women from across the country, doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, telling their own stories of discrimination. You didn't just destroy me, Alexander. You exposed a national pattern, and now that's going to change. As the agents cuffed him, Alexander tried one last gambit. Camila, I can make this up to you. Money, promotions, anything. She shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. The only thing you can give me now is the assurance that you'll never do this to anyone else. As he was escorted from the room, James Sr. approached Camila. Miss Santos, the board would like to offer you the position of Director of Hospital Quality and Integrity for the entire Whitmore network. Starting salary of $250,000 a year, plus full benefits. Camila looked out the window, watching Alexander being put into the police car. Dozens of reporters surrounded him, cameras capturing every second of his downfall. In the crowd, she saw some familiar faces, other black nurses who had faced similar discrimination, now feeling empowered to speak out. I accept, she said, but on one condition. I want protective protocols in place for all employees who report discrimination, and I want a scholarship fund for black nurses to pursue advanced degrees. Done, James Sr. replied without hesitation. As Alexander discovered that his personal fortune was being frozen by the federal government, and that no hospital in the country would ever hire him, Camila realized that that cold night at the bus stop had not been the beginning of her destruction. It had been the catalyst for the most powerful transformation of her life, showing that sometimes true justice does not come from the courts, but from the courage of a person who refuses to accept injustice and has the intelligence to turn every act of cruelty into irrefutable evidence against those who committed it. 6 months later, Camila Santos walked through the halls of Bronx Municipal Hospital with confidence radiating from every step. As the new Director of Hospital Quality and Integrity for the Whitmore Network, she had implemented changes that completely transformed the organizational culture. Dr. Santos, a young black nurse, greeted her in the hallway. I wanted to thank you for the scholarship program. I got my pediatric specialty thanks to the fund you created. Camila smiled, remembering when she herself had dreamed of opportunities like this. The scholarship fund for black nurses had become the largest program of its kind in the country, ironically financed in part by Alexander's confiscated fortune. In the conference room, Margaret Chun, now promoted to Director of Human Resources, presented the quarterly figures. Discrimination complaints are down 90%. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high. And most importantly, we haven't had a single forced departure due to fabricated disciplinary issues. James Whitmore, Sr. shook his head, still incredulous. Camila, in 6 months, you've managed to clean up a decades-old stain on our reputation. How can I thank you? By continuing to do the right thing, she replied simply. Meanwhile, across town, Alexander Whitmore was living a very different reality. After 3 months in federal prison, he had been released on bail, but his life was unrecognizable. No hospital in the country would hire him. His friends in the medical elite avoided his calls. His bank accounts remained frozen while federal investigations continued. He now lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens, supported by a small trust fund that his lawyers had managed to protect. At night, he compulsively watched the news, showing Camila receiving awards for innovation in hospital management and inclusive leadership. Former CEO convicted of systematic racial discrimination loses final appeal, read the headline on the screen. Alexander Whitmore to face federal trial in September. Tony Reeves, the private investigator, had become a respected figure in the fight against corporate discrimination. He now ran a consulting firm specializing in exposing predatory executives, using Camila's case as a model for other victims. What Camila did, he explained in a lecture at Columbia University, was to turn every act of cruelty into irrefutable evidence. She proved that the best revenge is not to destroy your enemy. It's to build something greater than he could ever imagine. Dr. Patricia Williams, one of Alexander's previous victims, had resumed her medical career and now worked as a consultant to Camila on the Whistleblower Protection Program. During a meeting, she remarked, "You know, Camila, I spent years feeling broken, thinking there was something wrong with me. Seeing you turn this into real change, it gave me back my dignity." Camila's sister, Helena, now ran a law firm specializing in discrimination cases, using the victory against Alexander as a precedent for dozens of other cases. "My sister didn't just save her own career," she told reporters. "She created a path so that other Black women will never have to go through this alone." One fall afternoon, Camila received an unexpected phone call. It was Alexander. His voice was unrecognizable, broken, desperate. "Camila, I need to talk to you. I know I don't deserve it, but could you meet me just once?" She agreed, moved more by curiosity than compassion. They met at a simple cafe in Harlem, not far from where she had lived when it all began. Alexander looked like he had aged 10 years in 6 months. His clothes were plain, his haircut cheap. I need to apologize," he stammered. "Not just to you, but to all the women I've destroyed. I know I can't undo." "You're right," Camila interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "You can't undo it, but you can serve as an example. Every time your story is told, other women understand that they have power, that they don't have to accept injustice." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I lost everything. Family, friends, career. But you've built something incredible on the ashes of what I tried to do to you." "Not on the ashes," Camila corrected, standing up to leave. "Despite the ashes. The difference is that you tried to destroy me thinking I was weak. But you discovered that there is a strength that no humiliation can break. The strength of someone who knows they deserve better and is willing to fight for it." That night, Camila was in her new apartment overlooking Central Park, a gift she had given herself with her first bonus as director. As she looked out the window, she remembered that cold night at the bus stop that changed everything. She picked up her phone and recorded a message for her social media. "A year ago, a man tried to destroy me because he thought a Black woman should know her place. Today, my place is an executive office where I make decisions that protect thousands of professionals. The best revenge isn't getting back at someone who hurt you. It's turning that hurt into fuel to do good." The post went viral in hours, inspiring thousands of comments from women sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity. "Alexander tried to destroy me, but he only destroyed himself. He learned the hard way that there are people in this world you can't break, because they've been tested by far worse storms and found they're made of something indestructible. Dignity, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to accept anything less than they deserve." If this story of transformation and justice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that sometimes the universe needs a little help from us to make justice happen. And the true victory is not destroying those who hurt you, but building something so great that their evil becomes completely irrelevant.